on the state side, so there will be requirements because your campus has been sanctioned from TEA. Your campus was also in the bottom 5% of campuses in the state of Texas on the federal end. And I want to preface all this by saying I don't believe that we're not doing great things at MacArthur, because I believe we're doing great things at MacArthur. But I believe there are some systems that we can change to ensure that A, we get out of sanctions on the state side, and B, we get out of sanctions on the federal side. Can it be done? Absolutely. Is it going to require lots of effort? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're doing what's best for kids. Okay? So we're all on closing the gaps. There were several indicators in closing the gaps that your campus had to meet in order to meet this particular domain. And let me tell you, on the federal side, the only thing the USDE looked at to determine the bottom 5% of schools in the state of Texas was domain 3. So every indicator that I'm going to cover with you in the next few minutes, you can find in domain 1, which is student achievement, and you can find in domain 2, which is school progress. Okay? Domain 3 is closing the gaps. The state looked at, and the USDE looked at simultaneously, all of your subgroups broken down. How are your special education students performing on STAR? How are your ELs performing on STAR? How are your special ed exits performing on STAR? How are your continuously enrolled students performing on STAR? So performance on STAR, or performance on TAKS or TAS, that's nothing new, right? The state is always going to look at how are we performing on state assessments. The difference this year for your campus was the state wasn't looking at how many kids passed the test. They were not looking at the approaching grade level. They were looking at the kids that scored meets and masters. And for my content area experts, you know, right, what meets and masters. For those that are not necessarily affiliated with a content, what that means is kids had to show mastery on this assessment. So most of the EOCs, if you've looked at them, kids have to score anywhere between 50 and 60% on that test in order to be considered passing by the state at the end that approaches grade level. The state was not concerned about that in this particular domain. They wanted to know the kids that were scoring at 70%, 80%, 90%. Those were the kids that you were given credit for in this domain. So the first thing that you're going to look at as far as the closing the gaps is concerned is your performance. So everyone look at our domain 3. And the first thing you're going to see is ELA and reading for all students. The target was 44% for all students. What you're going to see under there, depending on what side you're looking at, is either an N, and if you're looking at the data for your campus, which is on the flip side, you're going to see 23%. So the target for all students was 44% for meets and masters, and your campus was at 23%. So you didn't meet the target. You see how the state did that? Yep. And they did that for every group for achievement. So for those of you that are on the Y-N side, the one that says closing the gaps, MacArthur High School, where we have Ys or Ns, out of achievement on math and reading, how many targets did MacArthur meet? Thank you, I heard it in the front here, 0 targets. 0 targets for reading and math. The targets, which you'll notice, are different for every subgroup. So I'm going to follow along on the top line where we see ELA and reading. The target for all students was 44%. We didn't meet it as a campus. For African Americans, the target was 32%. We didn't meet it as a campus. The target for Hispanics was 37%. We didn't meet it as a campus. Special ed, the target was 19%. We didn't meet it as a campus. So the state did take into account each group, right? Targets were different based on the group and based on the expectations. And I'm using ELA as an example. I'm using our English 1 and English 2 as an example. But that's not to say all of the work lies on the English department. Because it is a campus-wide effort to teach English. Okay? Not necessarily dissecting a passage, if you will, but it is a campus-wide effort to teach English. So how are we reframing cross-curricularly to ensure that English is a priority on this campus? And I will tell you, without getting into too much detail for sake of time, the state is looking at how we're growing kids from English 1 to English 2, which is another area that could potentially hit you. So how is English becoming our priority? And I'm going to tell you this much. Yes, we have retesters, right? And the reality of our English 1 retesters is we're going to have a hard time getting them to meet to masters, especially if they couldn't get approaches. But what are we doing with our first-time English 2 testers to ensure that we're getting them to meet to masters? That's going to have to be a campus-wide priority. And I can guarantee everyone in this room has a child that is most likely taking an English course. And so we can impact that regardless of whether we teach English.